Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm making a server for our React Native mobile app. So, in the previous video we created a simple test app, a quick one, or test route to see if our server is working. As you can see, when we make a get request to it, it's going to retrieve this information. So what we'll do is, let's go ahead and delete this. It will throw an error. Let's also control C out of this, and let's go to package.json. You see where it says scripts? Here, change test to star and change this echo, etc. Get rid of that. Change that to node1 index.js. So then now you can just do npm run start, and it'll just do that. It'll just do node1, etc. Let's see what happened here. It's because I'm importing something that doesn't exist, so we can get rid of that. Save that and it's running again. Now let's create our two routes we're gonna have. First one will be users, and the second one will be to-dos. Now let's also get the rest of our directory set up. So we're gonna have a config directory which is gonna store our mongoDB credentials and any other credentials such as our secret, and then our database stuff will go there as well. And then another directory, we'll call this middleware. So this middleware will is essentially all the bits that happen at the start of this app, and it'll run in the middle of everything. So it's a little bit like a middleman, and it'll handle certain stuff. So for our purposes, we're going to make an auth middleware which will handle all the authentication that's being made from the client to the server. And then we'll create a models directory. So in the models directory we'll have our mongoDB models, which will be to do and user, and that is what's going to define what our database structure looks like. And then we'll have a utils folder. So let's go ahead and make our utils real quick. So inside of our utils we're going to create a isEmpty file, just like in React Native mobile app 1, if you guys did that. So const isEmpty is equal to value, and then here we'll go value equal to undefined, or value equal to null, or the type of value is equal to object, and object.keys dot length is equal to 0, or the type of value is equal to string, and value.trim.length equal to 0, and then export default is empty. So here we're basically just checking if the value is null, empty, it's null, undefined, an empty string, or an empty object. And then an empty object can be an array, or it can be an actual object. So let's close that out. And before we really get into creating our routes, we need to make all our configs, middlewares, set up our database, etc. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's prepare our models, because they don't need too much. So we'll type to do and user, and in our user one we'll import mongoose. So equals require mongoose, and const user schema equal new mongoose dot schema. So what is a schema? A schema is basically the template to which our database objects will utilize to store information. So for the case of our user, they're going to need an email, right? They're also going to need a password, and when it was created. So now these are the three types that will be alongside the default type. So if we have a look at our user database, you can see we've got email, password created, and then ID and underscore v is Mongo stuff. To whom would you like to send this? Not Siri. Right. And then inside of each variable that we want, we're going to define the type. So type string, required true, and unique true. And then here we're going to say type is also string, and required is also true. And then here we'll do type date, and our default will be date.now. So type string is just as it is. It will say this is a string object that you're expecting. Required is that it needs to exist, so if it doesn't, throw an error. And unique meaning you cannot have multiple records of the same type of email, so you can't have test@email.com twice. And then password is also required. And then created, the type is now date, so it's a date format. And then the default meaning whenever it's created, it'll just use today's date of when it was created. That way we don't need to provide a date to it. And lastly, we want to export this, so module.exports equals user, which equals mongoose.model user, and then user schema. So what this will do is it'll export user, and then if user does exist, it'll use the schema that's being used, or it'll create a new one based on this. So once we made that one, let's go into our to-dos, and inside of our to-dos we want to go ahead and import the same way. Mongoose equals require mongoose, and then const to-do schema equals new mongoose.schema. And here we also have our user. We'll have a title, and we'll have a created. So same way. Now we'll do title and created first. So our title type is of course string, required true. Our created is also date, and default will be date.now. Just like that. Now user is slightly different. This will be type of mongoose.schema.types.object ID, so that's a pretty long one, and the reference is user. So this is a to-do here. So let's have a look at to-do. Now to-do says the user is an object ID. So this object ID is referring to this user's table, which has an ID here. So every to-do will be associated with an user ID, and that will be required by default, but we'll link that up ourselves anyways, so we don't need to put required there as the user isn't providing that information. So now that we've created our models, we'll create the rest of the structure in the next video. So thanks for watching guys, catch you then.